little size on me anyway. And things were tough for everybody. Anybody that went through the Depression, some of you got gray enough hair this morning to know what I'm talking about. But if you ever went through the Depression or had anything to do with it, brother, you know that this country went through some tough times. And I could spend all the morning here talking about some of the conditions that went on. But Jesse and Alma, my uncle on my father's side, and his wife, didn't have any children. And there's 6 of us boys. I was next to the oldest one, and they asked me, you know, everything is just tough, and they asked me if I'd like to come over there and spend a year or 2 with them and go to school. And you don't know how I just jumped on that. She was always making, they didn't have any children, always making divinity candy or something like that every night. That's why I just had a good time every night. Ted and Lawrence Brannon, who was Alma's sister, they didn't have any children at that time, and we'd just all get together, and they just had one to spoil, and that was me. And brother, I enjoyed every bit of it. But along that time, there's 2 young men, Dr. Glenn V. Tingley sent out, who were college students. He sent them out with a tent and said, just go out and preach the gospel. That was his style, and that's what he did. And Glenn V. Tingley did all he could to get the gospel out. Had an old tabernacle right down next to the bus station in Birmingham, right across from the terminal, the Greyhound terminal there. And just old floors in there, old rough benches. But people packed that place out to hear him preach. People went from here to hear Dr. Glenn V. Tingley. And this, around Birmingham now, his marks are still there in missions. And so Jimmy Hale Mission. Jimmy Hale, who was a drunk there in Birmingham, they said one of the neatest fellows that you'd ever see. One of those fellows that could get as drunk as he could be and still just be neat as he could be, you know. And he staggered into that tabernacle several times, but one night he really heard the gospel and got saved. Then he got on the buses, trolleys, streetcars that were there then, and he'd go up and down that streetcar route just telling people about what Jesus had done for him. And they listened to him because he had the reputation in Birmingham as being the city drunk. And eventually established, which has been there now 60 or 70 years, Jimmy Hale Mission. These fellows came out here, and I picked up a New Testament there. I had bad eyes then, still have now, but I didn't have glasses then. So I needed something that I could really see, and so they had some large print New Testaments. And I gave 60 cents for one of them. I guess Jesse or Alma wouldn't give me that money, and I bought me one, and years later, when I was working for National Cement, about in 1944, I got to reading that. And as I read it, I had time working in the laboratory, go up through the plant, come back and run the analysis on what I had to do, and I'd read that New Testament. And the Bible is true. You can mark this down. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. You'll never get saved unless somebody tells you or unless you read the Word of God. You see, we come to conclusions about something that we've never investigated. If you ever get to reading the Word of God, I'll assure you this, it'll speak to your heart. It'll change your heart. It did mine. Anyway, I got saved then and then got married right after that. In 1945, 1946, Carolyn was born. And because of the Depression and because I had to work, I dropped out of school in the 8th grade. I wasn't making it then, and so I dropped out of school and went to work helping my dad in the log woods. And I was driving an old truck when I was about, 12, 13 years old. And I know what it is to be a logsman, at least in this country, not in the West Coast or something. But as a result of that, I went to work for the National Cement Company, and we had one child. I dropped out in 8th grade, and so I was so happy to be a Christian. And I felt like the Lord wanted me to go back to school. And so I started back to school when I was in the 8th grade up here at the high school, and trying to fit in one of those little old desks, Here I was, a man with a child, and trying to squeeze in the same places with these 8th graders there. And I finally got into that situation. When I got saved, I joined the Methodist Church over here. And the church there was so good to me. I preached the first time I preached, 1945, there in the Methodist Church. And immediately after I preached, I never thought about it till later, they said, we better get up some money and help him get in school. And they found out after I preached that I really needed some schooling, some help from somewhere, But they helped me in so many ways. Just so appreciative toward them for all they ever did. Miss Will MacDonald, her husband was the postman, one of the finest Christian ladies that you'd ever see. While I started back to school, she took me in to tutor me on the side, summer, whatever, taught me algebra and I don't know what all, but brother, I knew algebra when I got through with going with her. She was so appreciative of what I was trying to do that she just went out of the way in every way to help me all that she could. And I'll always be grateful to her for it. Had her funeral a few years ago here, and of course, I just always am thankful to her for what she did. After I got out of school at Southeastern, I wanted to go to Bible college. I wanted to at least get what I could. And now then, you can send off and get video tapes and just do everything. Well, about that time, they came out with a wire recorder. Now, most of you don't know what I'm talking about. Probably never saw one of them. But instead of a tape, it was a wire that ran through the heads on that thing. And this little old fine wire, and you can imagine what a mess that'd get if it get wound up. But I decided I'd see if I could get them to record some classes for me, and at least I'd get that much. But that thing, like everything else, it would break your arm to carry it, the mechanics that was in it. And that didn't work out for me. So I finally wound up going over to Southeastern Bible College. And I commuted over there every day and back for the schooling that I was getting. Came back, quick I'd get in from there, and I did this while I was going to high school as well. I'd jump out of my clothes and jump into some more work clothes and take off to work, and I did that for about 8 years, working at the cement plant, and in the meantime, I was trying to preach somewhere all the time. And you can imagine how everything was suffering because of that. But I'm thankful today for Southeastern Bible College. It was a school operated by faith, had some of the best Bible teachers that you'd ever hear. They brought in speakers that just were the best in the world, really, some of them. I had the privilege of hearing and being there. And I had to drop out in 1949 for I just got started good. And we were living over here in Frogtown, and the company decided they were going to tear down all those houses there and throw everybody out in the cold. Wasn't that cruel? Up until then, they even furnished your water, your electricity, and everything else. And then all of a sudden, throw you out in the cold. And I had to get out and do what I could to build a house. And so I took time to build a house. About that time, this church down here contacted me about coming down here and preaching some. They had the pastor that was before me, or a couple before me, was Brother Ham. And I was looking over some of the records the other day. And then the one after him was Bone. Ham Bone is who I followed here. Our Brother East right after that. But when I came over here, this church, of course, it was established in 1894 by prominent people, doctors and so forth, that established the original Hardins Chapel Church. It was over there where Bernice lives today in that area. 1939, they moved this building over here. It was a school and a church over there, Newport. And when I came down here, here was some of the people that were here that were just so encouraging to me and did all they could. Mr. Anderson, I'll take it alphabetically here, and Junior Anderson, Mr. Millard Anderson, Junior or James Brown. There was a Mr. Alverson that was here, the Brights, the Browns, the Bagwells, the Collins, the Cooks, the Daffrons, Davises, Gallupses, McCoys, Liggins, Poes, Pollards, Stones, Williams, Wilson, and the Vaughns. Those people were the ones that were basically here. And I really came over here for the money, to tell you the truth. They were paying, or said they'd give me $500 a year if I'd come on down here with them. And you figure that out, that's $41 a month, or $9.62 a week. And so I took that up, because I knew that I was done out at the Methodist. Those folks, had heard me preach. And after I hadn't been here too awful long, I got 2 pieces of mail that I've kept over these years. And I'll read you one of them, and I'll get the other one. Dear Mr. Ford, several of us have decided that you're not needed anymore at our church, but hesitate to say anything to you about it. We believe we could do better without you. And then he goes on to give, or this person goes on to give one reason for that. And we think that you're not around here much anyway. I was, hospitals and so forth, what I was born to do, I guess. And they said, we don't want to, we hope that you'll understand that it's for the best for us all, and are sure you can get another place to go. In other words, they want to throw me out like the Methodists did. This is not my opinion, but the opinion of others, and it's signed a friend. I'm glad that my enemy didn't write that one. By the way, that's got a 3-cent stamp on it. That puts it back there. This one, they didn't have I can't read the date down there, but I got this one about the same time. This one, of course, they wanted the post office to read this, and they put it on a card. On to broadcast it good, and they had plenty of time to read it in the post office then, so I know that they did. But anyway, about the same time, they put this one in an envelope, and they had a 4-cent stamp on it. Just about the same time I got both these. Hadn't been over here very long. But here's what this was. Not a word. Both of these were anonymous to me. But this other one is something that I've treasured. I treasure this, by the way. I know that I need straightening out every now and then. And I'm glad I had that friend to do it. But here was something that I've got. Now, this was back when $1 was $1. And this is what I envisioned when I opened this. Some poor widow woman had given out of her need to send me something that would help in what we were doing. And to make it even more valuable, that's a silver certificate. This has been in a file at my house all these years. Don't get it out very often. You know, if I get puffed up, I read this card. And if I need a little encouragement, I get this out. The only guilt I've felt about this ought to have been in the Lord's work. And I've tried, to pitch in a little extra because I know that this person sacrificially gave that in order to further the Lord's work. Now, I told you some of these that were here. Ms. Williams, Hattie Lee, she was here for every service, but late. You could just mark it down. You could fuss. You could do what you wanted to. She played the piano. She taught Sunday school. She led the singing. And everybody could be here and doing what they wanted to. She might have been raking leaves down there. That was her best hobby. Mr. Anderson was here and had an old pot-bellied stove over there, that they kept the place warm with. One room. And it was about a 28 by 48, something like that. And that, all the Sunday school classes and everything else met in it. You'd have a Sunday school class back here in this corner, and one here, one in the middle, maybe a curtain drawn between them, but that was it. Everything about it was just about dilapidated. It really needed some help. And so these people that I just named off here, and I can see some of these old men over there now working on that church, up on that roof, and it's about a 9 and 12, and it's not easy to stay on. But over there working, trying to keep it together. I put this podium down here because I wanted just to remind myself every time I walk in here and see it, I have memories of it. And this is what Paul had written to Timothy. When I call to remembrance the unfringed faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded that is in thee also. Paul was reminiscing. He's going back to what people had done, what this mother and grandmother had done, planted that seed that produced that church where Timothy was at. This podium here was fixed by Robert Moore and Ernest White. That bottom down there was off of an old swivel chair they'd thrown away at the cement plant, and we didn't have anything like that, and so I picked up an old 4x4, that's nearly what that is, that had been thrown out of a box car, and I carried it to Robert Moore. He dressed that thing down and made it look real good. Mr. Ernest White was a welder, and he fixed that bottom of that thing down there, and you can treat it as rough as you want to. You're not going to tear it up. But I could stand here and tell you name after name after name of people who did so much. When I had problems, I'd go see Ottman Phillips if I needed something done, He had a shop up there, and Robert Moore had a little shop, and I knew where they were, and I could get anything done that I wanted done. These men were willing to do that. James Hanna, when we rebuilt this or overhauled this oldest church over there, came down here and just worked as hard as he could. All of these fellows are gone now. But the Lord, in such a wonderful, wonderful way, just provided people that had a heart to keep this thing going. When I got this letter, this card, I didn't much care if they did run me off, I was losing $9.61 a week, but all the things that were going on, I didn't see any hope for the thing to float. But I'm going to tell you one thing, these folks did. They worked hard, they gave sacrificially. We overhauled that building over there. We went through a lot of things there, that would just slow. Had outhouses back there. So we decided we need to get modern and get a commode inside. Went out there behind it and dug us a well, and digging that well is just this old blue shell. That's all that's under here. And we went down about 15 or so feet, and all these old men and all of us out there working. And we just got enough seepage water out of that to have one commode in that church, so we built it back there and put one commode in and closed down the outhouses. I could just go on and on. When we built that one, then we built the kindergarten. And the people that come to my mind that I remember that's gone today, Marvin Pope just put so much work into that kindergarten. And Martha's Wells, she taught there some, was one of the substitutes and taught there. And Marvin, when we built this one over here, I can see him now just doing everything they could. I walked back in there this morning to see if we had any water. And if you're ever in a storm, you want to get out of a tornado, go back there in that little old room that's under the porch as you enter that building over there, and you'll see beams that Marvin Pope put in there that will support everything else will be gone when that's gone, in my opinion. We did so many things, and usually had a lot of, a little trouble along with it. I had a different philosophy from these fellows that were doing the work. When we built that building, J.W. was over there, and you know J.W., and Macy England, and Rodney Daffern did the wiring, and I'm sure that Rodney gauged every wire that was in there to make sure that, the calipers was right on it, that it was the right size. You went over there today and looked at it, I'll assure you that every wire is just perfectly spaced and everything else. And J.W., he might tear a wall or two down the next day after they'd put it up. And we had a little conflict. I think about them, when they're gone, and I'm sure they thought about me. My philosophy was this: let's do it in a hurry. Theirs was this: let's do it right. And that's a terrible way to be, when you got those thoughts going on. I could just go on and on and on, and I will tonight. I'm just going to take a little time here. The people that have put so much here, I look up here now, and I can see Jim Ogle, and I can see Tom Strothard and a group hanging right up in there, putting in wiring and what all was going on right here in this building. And I found out how to work that. Steve Bont had given me some bad chocolate, or surplus chocolate that the school couldn't sell. And I found out old Brother Jim would just climb these walls if you'd put the chocolate to it. And I did. I kept him, just full of chocolate all the time, like a monkey. He was up there going. so many things the number of things that have gone on here. They established the kindergarten, and these girls taught for nothing. We had the only kindergarten till the public schools started, and we had more than we could handle. Denise and Vivian, I think, were the first two that started the kindergarten over there. And we had more than we could handle. That running out our ears. And Larry and Norma started the Awana, and just had kids running out of our ears here. And I've been so appreciative for that and all that they did, and taking care of that. 1984, we moved into that building over there. And of course, up until that time, this church did not own 1 inch of land. Not 1 inch. We tried every way we could to get some land. And what the agreement was with the National Cement Company, when they were over there, they said, as long as you've got a pulpit in that building, you can stay there. When they moved over here, they moved the pulpit on just as much land, and that was nothing. Until late one evening, Rebecca Camel and Dr. Camel were coming here, and she said, wouldn't that be a nice place for a church over there? And I thought, sister, you don't know how nice that'd be. And a few days after that, they gave us a deed for probably 4, 5, 6 acres here. And that was the first land, so far as I know, that this church ever owned. Was it, Bernice? And then, a few days after that, a few Sundays after that, he called me back. And, of course, he wanted to keep it anonymous. And he said, I want to give you another deed. And he deeded us about 60 acres of land here. We just could go on and on and on. Mr. Wright was the warehouseman for us, all this building. Anytime we needed anything out, to build with, we knew where to go, and just went over there, and he'd furnish us whatever we needed to take care of it. And of course, all of these others, W.T. Dalford worked, Macy and J.W. and W.T. were together every day. We probably got old bent nails around here now that W.T. swept up, saved every one of them, pulled every one of them, and worked just like he's going to work every morning to take care of that. And Larry was over there doing the plumbing at night. George Hawkins was the insulation expert. We had a trailer load of old insulation out here that was it given to us? It was. If it wasn't, it was nearly. And I can see him now, and I didn't ever stop to talk to him because I didn't want to be around him with that insulation. But here he is, standing down there with that knife, cutting it precisely, putting it in there. And I can assure you that that place over there is full of insulation. And George basically put most of that in there himself. J.B. Walters, down here seeing that our parking was right. He liked to run me off. He had all of that stuff, and it had to be so when he did it. And I told you how I operated. I wanted to do it in a hurry, and they wanted to do it right. And I had somebody to dump something down there. He came and told me, what he thought about that, and had him to move it back out. And you see that foundation down there is right. All of this in here, of course, this building, Dave has had a part in every one of these. When we built this gym over here, he got most of just all kinds of stuff given to us. And 2 or 3 fellows came down from Tennessee, and either Dave paid for all the wiring material, or those people did. And as a result, I hope that we had a part in it. That fellow that came down here and did that became a Christian. And he died sometimes after that. But a fine fellow, but drove all the way from Tennessee down here to do that because Dave had influenced him to do that. This building here, brother, we've got clones everywhere on this building. I could carry you a lot of places and show you where people have come up here and cloned this building. And just about the time we thought we was in here, we found out that we didn't have the building that ties these two together. That wasn't in the package or something. And so Larry had a preacher, Brother Lowry, and he was in the scrap building business up there. And they went up there and took what we had to have. Larry carried it down to his place. Cost us about 10% of what they wanted to do it, and got it in just that week, and they were wanting to put us off a couple of months. And I could go on and on and on, just telling you about what God has done through you. Through you. Now, I've been around in the way, but God has taken you as a body and has done all of these things. We've had just a lot of things that the Lord has done that we just take for granted. We got, for instance, the Dial of Devotion. How many calls you figure we've got on Dial of Devotion since it's been in? Anybody got a guess? Conservatively, we've had close to 600,000 calls every day. I get to speak for 2.5 hours on average every day. Every day that goes on. That I get up every morning, put that thing on, and time to get it on. In fact, I have to wait sometimes for somebody to get off of it. But every day for 28 years, we've done that. And God's just used that. And you know how that got started? It's pretty expensive to start. That was when the machines cost us big, big money, $1,000 a piece. We had to have a couple of them. But I knew that the Lord wanted us to do that. And I knew that the Lord would take care of it. I didn't get it. Didn't even get the machines in. Till here comes a lady up there named Pat Archer. Trying to run my business. Giving me money to help pay for those machines. And of course, others, we've got a little, not many of you even know this. We've had a little old fund, Dial of Devotion fund, for numbers of years. And some of you give consistently to that. Some of you don't even know it's there because it's never mentioned. And what I do with that, what we do with that, it's always more than we need because the telephone company Raglan Telephone has just done more than you could imagine to see that Dial of Devotion stayed on there. And the money that goes into it, we carry fruit bags or something, maybe give a little money out of our pockets to people that are in the hospitals, and some of them, that really need some help. You're doing that. And I could go on and on. And the National Cement, when we got ready to build this building, sent their biggest machine that they had down here. Wayne Carlisle came down here, moved all of that dirt out to get that basement over there. And didn't cost us a nickel because of God's goodness. The brick company has been good to us. And the National Cement Company, Serge Brazilato, all this parking area out here. that's out there. Surge took care of all of that for us. Didn't cost us anything. We might send them a bill for furnishing them a place to dump stuff. I don't know. But you just see how God has put everything together when we just are willing to turn our lives over to Him. Did you know this? That God's grace, and I could just keep going on and on and on. All you girls that send food, Joe Walters, all that he did, doing all this work here to see that we had foundation, and Robbie down here, and Jerry McMahon back here hanging this rock and all of this stuff. God has just provided us with everything and everybody that's willing to work together. The bath plumbing over here, Perk back there, did all of that plumbing that's in that gym and probably some of this other around here that I've just forgotten about. I can just look back here and see what all of you have done and just realize that when we work together as a body, what God can do. We need to stand and sing that, don't we? It is no secret what God can do. Then, I want to tell you something. I didn't realize this, and none of us ever do until we get saved, how sin blinds us, how sin deceives us, how it confuses us. And I look back in my own life now and I say, well, why couldn't I have seen that? And of course, you do too. When Newton wrote Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. We'll just sing that. Stand together. We're going to sing it. I've asked Brother Roger this morning. I said, I want you to help me to just illustrate how blinding sin is. He's been there, you know. He knows. I'll ask Brother Gary if he'd just put a blindfold on him. And I want to sort of lead him around here and confuse him a little bit, brother, and see if he knows where he is. See, everybody thinks they know where they are. You think you got it figured out. Brother, go ahead and put it on him. We're going to sing Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. You got something you want to say? Well, sin will shackle you too. Sin will shackle you. All right, blindfold. Now, brother, I didn't have that. That was his idea right there. I didn't have that idea. Now, make sure he can't see, and I want you to confuse him as much as you possibly can. I want you to lead him around here and get him lost good. Okay, let's sing the first verse of Amazing Grace. You walk him around here a little bit, turn him around, and ask him if he can really know it, if he is, sort of confused. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. You confused him. If y'all want to just see what he does and how confused he gets, y'all can just walk back there enough to see. I want him to know. And you ask him, brother, how it feels to be blind. All of that going on, a big part of that is going to school, working, and sometimes holding evangelistic meetings and so forth. And at one time, while I first came here, I was preaching here 2 Sundays a month, driving either to Randolph County or Clay County, and go down there on the weekends, the other 2, and spend the night down there, and go down and stay all day Saturday, visit all I could, preach twice, and then get back in Sunday night. And it wasn't easy on my family, it wasn't easy on Mildred to have to put up with me, and the way the Lord just worked things out, and I couldn't have done it. At one time, when I was trying to go to school, of course, gas wasn't as high as it is now, but it did cost something. And I was trying to go to school and making 5 trips to Birmingham a week in school. And they worked out there at the cement plant where I could pick up parts, things that they needed after I got out of school. They'd call the orders in, and they furnished me a pickup truck. I'd drive it in and pick up all that stuff, get back out here. And the good thing was they was paying the gas and paying me for traveling and just taking care of them. And, of course, it was because of the favor that the Lord had given me. Brother Roger, you got a long way to go when it comes to cars. I was talking to Gerald today, and I'd forgot. They've given me so many cars here, I can't even count them, brother. And Gerald and Vernon, he said the first one they gave me, they brought it up there to the house. And then the second one, I saw a picture not long ago here at this old church where they had given me another car over there. And I guess in all, they probably gave me 8 cars since I've been here. So you just behave yourself and they'll keep you in good shape, brother. Isn't it wonderful how the Lord does things? And it is, and has been with us. And I again want to thank all of y'all for all you do here. Mentioned this morning that some of the things that went on here over these years, at the same time we started the kindergarten, we started our Dial of Devotion program. And I mentioned this morning, conservatively speaking, we've had about 600,000 calls. Now you say, and when we first started to do this, I couldn't have been more convinced if God had sent an angel down and said, this is what you need to do. And I got right on it, and at that time was using the same equipment that Bell Telephone was using for their operators and so forth. And those machines cost us about $1,000 a piece. We had to have 2 because you had to keep one in the shop all the time. Those things were this big, and this high, full of gears and tapes, reel tapes, and all kind of relays and so forth. And they wouldn't touch them for less than $40. You go up, carry them over there, it cost you $40 if they just took a screw or 2 out of it. We kept them in that. And then from that, when they changed it up a little bit and they went to cassette tapes. Now here's the history of that, just a minute. At that time, Dewberry Engraving, one of the boys over there was trying to have a track ministry and what he could do. And somebody that I knew him. And he sent a little machine up to New York And it was a time when President Nixon's tapes were in question. That fellow that worked on his tapes worked on our little old machine here to try to get us to where we'd have it. Then they came to the small cassettes, and then today, and those things were pretty high too, the people we had to buy them from. But today, what we've used, Tim got me in a little old answering machine, basically, that has a chip in it. And where I was spending a lot of money to try to keep this other equipment up, that little old chip just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and went for years there. Didn't even have to spend $25, $50 to do anything for it. But the Lord has just provided in that way, in an unusual way. Then we went to our outside service. And again, I couldn't have been more convinced if the Lord himself had told us to do that. And so I suggested that we do it. I'd had a little taste of street preaching. And it's sort of in my blood. And I'd walk around out there in the front, and I said, boy, that looks just like it ought to be an arena down there, you know, and we ought to get going with this outside service. And we did. And old Lee Jackson, when he found out that I was going to do it, I couldn't keep him pushed back out of the way. He was putting wires in, doing everything, building carts, doing everything that we needed to move our equipment around with. And Lee worked out there just so faithful in what he was doing to make sure that that worked. And it still does. There's still cable buried out there now. I'm sure we'll go out there and clean it up some that Lee helped put in, that helped us to get going out there. And of course, Tim and Joe and these other fellows that have just faithfully carried this on to see that we had it going in the way that we should. And so many things here I'm going to have to cut out on here tonight because I know that I won't have time to get through it. But every one of these buildings, every project that we've ever undertaken here, we have not owed a dime. Give the Lord praise. Amen. Every time that we've taken on anything here, now we've usually wound up the last nail and last nickel went together. And I know when we went in this building over here, we had spent our money, and we had these pews in the old church over there. Wasn't enough of them, but they were real nice pews, still are. We got them around here. And I got up on that morning and I said this, now here's our choice. If you want to, we'll try to raise the money here to get some new pews to put in this building, or we'll use the others till the money comes in. When we passed the offering plate that morning, all the money was there for those pews, and all of it was there without ever doing anything. We didn't have the choir chairs, so Frank Davis and his wife told me this. Said, you order those choir chairs, whatever you need there, that's taken care of. So before that day was over, we had everything completely paid for and out of debt for that building over there. When we built this gym over here, the same thing. When we built this parsonage, old Ralph Daffron was here then, and he spent just like W.T. had over there. Spent all the time that he possibly could over there working. And when we poured the concrete, I put his name and the date over there. He tried to rub it out, but I think I made it so deep that he couldn't. And Ralph was so faithful to do all that he could. Of course, he's in heaven tonight. We thank the Lord for that. Then, about, I don't know how many years ago, these girls started seeing that everybody that was sick had food. And Christine and Mildred started that, and it's been something that the Lord has just used for real testimony about what, little things can do. And by the way, I hope that you saw in the bulletin this morning those two addresses for Lou, or Hester, her name is Holcomb, and then for Malia Ford, sent them a card. Both of these have been in an intensive care unit on a ventilator for about 5 weeks now. You don't know how that just, they can get so depressed there. And if you'd send them a card, I'm sure that would be a big encouragement to them. And then we have a group around here that just work on somebody's house all the time. They've usually got 2 or 3 projects going. And you don't know what that means sometimes to some people. I don't see Jerry back there tonight, but Jerry McMahon just got in his house Thanksgiving Day. Now, he doesn't have his carpet down, but brother, you would think if you saw him that he had a mansion up there. You know what it cost him? It cost him about $10,000. With the help that he got from all of you that are in here tonight, it cost him about $10,000 to get him a 2-bedroom and everything else that he needed there, house, kitchen, dining room, and whatever the rooms you call them, and utility rooms and everything else. And Jerry's just so tickled he and his wife are tonight. But it was because of what work most of you folks have done here to help him. And it's just so amazing what God does. $10,000 for a well-built house, by the way. And when he gets his carpet down, what you walk on up there now is this. They've got down, and every room is full of scripture verses on that concrete. You go up there and just walk on the Bible if you want to. That's what's in every room up there. They've got scripture verses all over that floor. Everywhere they go, they'll be seeing a scripture verse or big blocks of them, because that's what they've done there. And I'm sure that God's going to take care of anything else they've got there for that. And let me see what else I was just going to make sure that I didn't leave out. Of course, we're thankful to Gary Leverett for all that he's done to help us here these years with every building project that we've had. The Lord has just sent us so many people here that have done so much for us. I don't know where I mentioned it this morning or not. Al Wiggins. When we started building this building, George Hawkins was working with the railroad company, and it so happened that it carried him just everywhere. I don't know exactly what he was doing with them, but he found a place, a sawmill, that would cut that lumber for us, and we could buy it just a good deal. Al Wiggins was running one of the trucking companies here, I don't remember which then, and he just, anything we needed moving, he saw that we had it. National Cement Company not only dug this basement up here for us, when we got ready to set all that roof system over there, they sent a crane down here, and they set all of that roof system for us, paid for it, and of course, looked after us in a special way, in that way. Lee Bell has put in all of our air conditioning except one time. Bobby Alverson put in the first air conditioner. When we were in that old building over there, we put in a window fan, and brother, we thought we were uptown. Had an old window fan in there, that we'd sort of wedged up in the window, and the Lord just so looked after us in that. But Bobby If you know Bobby, he's going to do it Bobby's way. And we put in a unit over there, a furnace and a air conditioning unit. And we had to dig out under the church to get it in there. And to get back to it, brother, was, I don't even like to think about it. But we kept it there, and then eventually we put it overhead. But Bobby worked so hard to see that we had that. When I remember one thing that we did, the roof system over there on the old church, we had this big bell that's out here, that sitting on this pedestal out here, and I got up in there and looked at it, and I just don't see how it stayed there, except the angels probably held it up there for a long, long time. So Vernon said, we'll take it down. And Vernon and I went over there, and somehow or another, just the two of us let that bell down from up on top of that roof of that church down. And when I think about that now, I'm scared, of where I could be tonight. But Vernon, he just knew what he's doing, I guess, and took it down and took care of it. I could just go on and on and on with things that the Lord has done. I want to mention some of the things that really had effect on my life, some of the people that I have. About every one of them that I'll mention tonight are in heaven. Dr. Charles Fuller. When I first got saved, it was during the wartime, and you couldn't get a radio then. You could get blow something that if you put your ear right down to it, you could hear it. And Dr. Charles Fuller had the old-fashioned revival hour. And every Sunday, 1 o'clock, out of Los Angeles, California, the old-fashioned revival hour came on. And I sat there, I did move the radio around or whatever I had to do to try to hear every word that he said. His family were big in the Sunkist Corporation. And the Depression, I understand, wiped them out. And when that was a blessing in disguise, because of that, Dr. Charles Fuller became a Christian. One of the most compassionate men I've ever known. And he was faithful to preach the gospel just till his last day. Had more influence on my life than at that time, just exactly what I needed. Dr. M.R. DeHaan, he was a medical doctor. Any of you ever hear Dr. DeHaan? Some of you have. And he's a medical doctor, one of the best Bible teachers I ever knew. I had the privilege of hearing both of these fellows in person. Dr. Donald Gray Barnhouse, he's a Presbyterian, knew 17 languages, I'm told. And just such a smart fellow, preached for years and years just out of the book of Romans. If you listen to him, that's what you're going to hear. He's going to be preaching out of the book of Romans. And the Lord allowed me to hear him in person. Dr. Vernon McGee, who's in heaven tonight, and his tapes are still being played every day and night, reaching more people, I'm sure, tonight than he did when he was alive. But one of the best Bible preachers that you'd ever know. Brother Glenn Adkins. He was a Greek professor over at Southeastern. And when I went over there, he read, they made you write your testimony and so forth. And when he read about how unruly I'd been and so forth, he called me in and said, now, I want to ask you something. You're here to go to school. Is what your wife's feeling on it? Because I just knew that he knew or thought that I'd never make it there in school. And when I told him, well, my wife's 100% behind me in it, and he did everything that he could to help me in school. He just died recently. And in fact, before he died, his wife would call me pretty often and tell me about Glenn and want me to talk to him on the phone. Ms. MacDonald, I mentioned this morning, a lady that took me in, tutored me, tried to help me all that she could to get me through school, and I appreciate that so, so much. I'll never forget what she did. Ms. Alma Davis. She was one of the best Bible teachers. That's John's grandmother. She's one of the best Bible teachers there was in this country. And I'd go over and sit with her, and she'd straighten me out and keep me straight, do all that she could to encourage me in any way. Miss Tom Adams. She was another lady at the Baptist church that just did everything that she could to encourage me and help me and instruct me and keep me out of some things, I'm sure, doctrinally, that I would have just been in such bad shape for. I could go on and on and on. Again, I mentioned the Methodist Church. Those people, they helped me what they could. And then still, over the years, just helped me in what was going on. Then, one of the 2 or 3 of the people here at the school, Mr. Porch, one of my principals, George Eden. When George came here, he was a math teacher and taught bookkeeping. In fact, Mildred we got out some old stuff the other day, and I was in a bookkeeping class there I had to take, and so that was my bookkeeping. Had down my debits and my assets and everything, and she'd read and see where I'd spent 10 cents for a drink or something, and had to give an account for everything. But I thank the Lord for these folks that helped. And then Mr. L.U. Dickinson, who came in here himself because of the Depression, and started a sawmill out here. And when I built my house, let me have everything that I needed to build that house, just on my word. And I wired houses and put in plumbing and did all of those things and paid it back just as fast as I could. And the Lord used him. Miss Dixon helped a lot of people. Ms. Lowell, she's over to nursing home tonight. And she was one of the teachers that was there while I was in school, and in high school. And she just did so much to help me. And then we started the newsletter. You still get that newsletter today. And Steph Jackson has been so faithful over these years to see that newsletter gets out. Now, you don't think, that you pick it up and you say, well, that's just something you throw together. It's not, because I did it for a long time myself. And it just took a lot of time to get things together and get it fixed up and taken care of. And they did that. And then Jack's dad, he was my dad's younger brother. And I say again that during the Depression, I don't know where we'd have eaten sometimes if he hadn't just really provided something to eat. I always liked to go to their house. I always bought a full stick of bologna. Any of you ever seen a full stick of bologna? That's what they bought. And brother, it was good. I can assure you. Put that bologna and that sawmill gravy together, and I'll assure you that was something. Then, one of my aunts, Miss Sisson's mother up here, Fairy Hall, that was my dad's sister. And when I was 2 things that she did all she could to try to encourage me. One of them was that while I was building my house up there, I did just about all that work by myself. I mean, absolutely by myself. Except she'd come up there and I'd drop a rope down, and she'd tie something on for me and I'd pull it up. And she was there just all the time because she liked that. You might go by her house, she might be on top of the roof repairing it herself. She's just that way. But she did that. But not only did she do that, anywhere I was preaching, she was there to support me and encourage me and see what she could do in that way to encourage me. And then Dr. Bogan, who was here then, he came in here right after the Depression, and most of our children were born at home. How many of them, Mom? How many? 3 of them. Half of them born at home. Cost us $25 a piece. And we had to furnish the water. And but Dr. Bogan could be a grumpy old fellow, I guess. Had a reason to be. He didn't ever get any sleep. But he's one of those fellows that ride a horse back into these mountains up here to see his patients if he had to. Had an old Nash car, and of course it wouldn't get back in those mountains. He'd go up there and send food back to those folks and see that they got their medicine. And he was always just wanting to do something to help me, and did do it. Alan Dowford, Margaret's husband. When I was trying to get started, Sam Jones called me this afternoon and interrupted me now, and wanted to talk some. But Sam and I tried one year to travel with a tent. And I was here, of course, and I'd got a hold of an old Chevrolet car. Frank Davis had a big story about it. Brought it from Mr. Roy. What was the car dealer there in Pell City? Holiday. And Frank always made a big deal about it. It's an old 41 Chevrolet. You could see the ground through the floorboard in it. And we put that tent up in several places. We went down to Selma, Alabama. Sam knew a good many of the preachers down there. And that was a big tent, 60 by 90, seated 1,000 people. And we were well fixed for it, you know. Well, we shipped it down there, and I went down there in that old car to put it together. And I got down there, and one of the fellows that went down there just followed me down there was Bill Hines. And he went down there to help me put that tent up. And I mastered the thing to where I could get it up. It had 2 40-foot, 4-inch pipe that you had to get in the air first and get them down. And then you could lace your tent together and put it together. But Alan Dowford would help me. Sam and I had a smaller tent for a while, and we tried that. And Alan would go anywhere, anytime he could to help me with that tent. In fact, Sam did most of the preaching, and I did most of the tent work. You know, I wasn't a tent maker as Paul was, but I was a tent raiser. And God blessed it. But we got down to Selma, and somehow or another, all those preachers had forgotten Sam. And we had that big tent up and seat 1,000 people, and you could have put them all on one pew here, just about every night. And there's some lady there that Sam knew through his uncle. They had sort of courted a little bit. She had a boarding house, and she took us in and kept us, and we didn't get enough money, literally, to feed herself, you know. Sam would leave there, headed back to New Orleans. He's in school thumbing. He'll thumb his way back to New Orleans, get back to school, and down there to his family. And I had that old car. And here's one of the things about tents. If you got a tent up and you get a little wind or rain, you better be there with it. That thing will pull all those stakes up out of the ground, and it'll be on the ground when you get back to it. And I've got off from work here at night, and drive to Anniston or wherever we headed up, and spend the night with that tent trying to keep it in the air. But I'm saying all of this to say this. God is faithful. Faithful in everything that He does. I tried preaching on the streets here some. And usually preached on Saturday. But then, one day I got home, and I just had such a burden to get up there on that street. I don't remember, Monday or Tuesday or something. I had an old amplifier, tube amplifier, still got the thing up there somewhere. Some of these old bugle speakers. I carry them up there and put them on the top of my car. And I went up there that day and preached on that street. And when I finished preaching, they came and told me that there's a fellow got killed with a load of logs back up here out toward Fairview, coming down through there, and he hit a tree, and those logs came in and killed him. And the fellow that owned that place there then, they'd given me power to run that, said he got saved out there that day because I was preaching out there on the street. I don't know all the details of what will happen from now on with it, but I believe this, that God is faithful, has been over the years, to everything that we've ever just been willing to trust Him with. I hate to tell it to my grandkids, I guess, but the Lord saved me. I hear this song, when He reached down His hand for me. Brother, I was down about as far as you could go. My dad, as I told you before, was an alcoholic. And if I wanted it, and I thank God I never did drink much, but I was one of those fellows I could take a teaspoonful of alcohol and I was fixed up for a long time. And I tried that a time or two. But I do, tough times. And I went to Anniston there's a fellow came in here, they had a slide on the railroad track over here. And the mountain slid in and blocked the railroad off, the trains off. So he came in up there and had some old trucks. And I went up there and got a job with him driving one of those old trucks. I doubt that I was old enough to have license, but he hired me anyway. And then when he left me here, I went over to Fort McClellan with him. And brother, things got worse and worse. And I was sleeping literally in an outhouse. It wasn't an outhouse, but a shed out there, and driving that truck during the daytime. So I got, I said, hey, I'm going to get away from this. And I went out in Anniston there and standing on the street, and a fellow came along with a truck, and he was going down to South Georgia to pick up a load of produce. And asked me if I wanted to go. And I said, yeah, I'll go with you. And I got up in that truck, and I found out pretty soon why he wanted me to go. He wanted to be able to stop at any place he could to get him something to drink. Now, I didn't drink anything. But what he didn't know was this, that my eyesight at that time was 225. And one of my eyes, he had to be drunk to let me drive that thing. And I remember coming back through Columbus, Georgia, whatever fort that is, or armies, whatever it is there. And I was coming down through there, I guess all over the road, because I didn't know where I was, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And those MPs stopped me. And I'd rather they'd put me in jail, I think, than some of the other things they threatened me with. But I just know this, that God has had His hand upon me. So many things I could just share with you tonight about what God has done and what He has entrusted us with. And just amazing what the grace of God does if we're willing to just do halfway what He tells us. And it's to Him that all glory is due. Now, Somebody asked me, well, how's things happen there to church that way? 3 things that I attribute it to. Number 1, trying to do it biblically, trusting God, trying to pay attention to what He's doing, trying to be sensible about it, trying to do it according to what the Word of God says. Number 1. Number 2, just find you some good people and stay with them. You people have been so giving here. Every way. This church is noted for that. Being so giving. And I want you to know that I appreciate it so much. As you know, I don't know that I've ever preached on tithing here. And sometimes I feel like I should, because I believe that if you know the principles that God gives for giving, that if you practice those principles, that God is going to bless you in such a way that you would never, never, never forget it. In fact, I heard a Baptist preacher this morning preaching on tithing. And this is what he said. No, it wasn't. It was Jack Hayford preaching. And he said this, that his mother and daddy wanted to teach him to tithe. And what they did was this. They gave him his allowance, which was 10 cents. And they gave him a nickel and 5 pennies. And they set him down, and they told him this. They said, now, this is the same as a dime, 10% of a dollar. This dime is. This 10 pennies or a nickel and 5 pennies here, that makes up a dime. And they told him this. Said, now we're going to church tomorrow. What you ought to do is give that penny to the Lord. And he said that the next day he did that. And then, of course, later on, he said he went on, and later on his money increased with him some. And like most of us are, we say, well, the Lord don't need that much, He might have needed that penny, but I don't want to overdo this thing if I've got more money than that. And he said the Lord reminded him of this. It's just a penny. Just a penny. Out of that dime, of course, but how God had blessed him because he applied that principle. I can truthfully say this tonight. Mildred and I have lived conservatively as we could, but we've never needed a dime that we couldn't put our fingers on. We've never needed anything but what God has provided it for us, and most of the time in abundance. And so, the second thing, first thing, do it with a biblical principle. The second thing, just know that God's going to lead people to what to do about their giving. And then, the third thing we've done here, keep a Daffrin as a treasurer. That'll work. Ms. Daffrin, when they were giving me $9.16 a week here, Ms. Daffrin kept everything together. And as soon as Ms. Daffrin got to where she couldn't do it, we got Jane. Don't ask Jane for no money. Now, Jane's very, very generous and gracious. But I've thought about that. That combination's worked here some way. We've had just God's principles, and then just people that are so giving. And then we've had a Daffrin here as a treasurer ever since I've been here. Now I don't nobody apply for the job. I'm going to vote for Daffrin if we have any changes made here. And then Mildred got out a while back. Don't know why she did it. But when I have a funeral, at least part of the time, I just throw those clergy cards around. And she'd pitch some of them at least back. And I've averaged, I guess this year, I've had 35 funerals already. Before it's over, I hate to tell you, I'll have another funeral or two before this year's over. It's just so. Hope it's not one of you. Hope it's not mine. But I've had about 1,000 funerals since I've started preaching. And I remember one, in fact, I stopped as close to I guess, along sort of one of the first funerals that I had, Mr. John Milstead. And he lived up there just above the school. Probably most of you don't remember him. But I had his funeral way back about 51 to somewhere along there. And for those years, I guess I've averaged usually from 35 to 50 funerals a year. And I've tried to do this. I want to do it. I want every time I have a funeral some way to give the gospel, to give people hope, to let them know that the Lord Jesus is the answer to all the needs that any of us might have. And if we're just willing to trust Him, just do things His way, that God is going to be there. It's just amazing to me how He's looked after our family, looked after me health-wise. I know had to have a little gallbladder surgery or something over there, and I heard one of those doctors said he's healthy as a horse when they was trying to put me under, And I was glad to hear that. I'd rather hear that than say, I don't know where he's going to make it or not. But it's God's graciousness. He's just blessed me in every way that you could bless or be blessed. And I want to give Him praise for it. And what you folks did here last week, I realized this, that one of these days I'm going to have to change the way I'm doing. In fact, I had a call from a preacher out of town here the other day and said, I can't be here Sunday. And I just want to congratulate you and tell you we're thinking about you and so forth. And he asked me this question. He said, about January the 1st, you're going to step aside or something? And I wondered if some of y'all have put him up to saying that. And I got to thinking about that, And so tonight, I want to tender my resignation. January the 1st, 2021. I'll be 91 then. I'll be 99 then. And if y'all are around, I want you to vote for me. I want to thank you again just for your gracious goodness to me. And I want to thank our Father, our Heavenly Father, for the way He's looked after us, provided for us, everything. I'm amazed at this. I worked at that cement plant over 40 years, and a big part of that, I got up at 3 o'clock. I was at work at 3 o'clock every morning where I could be in hospitals by 11 o'clock. I'd be at home. And I've been amazed at this. When I retired from there, I had insurance that has just been insurance. It's covered everything I've ever had since then. And just the way the Lord placed everything in place, to take care of me way before I ever got there. If I was having to pay the insurance that some people are tonight, it'd be tough. In fact, I was looking through that Jane, it's up back there somewhere in that little office, and I'll give it back to you, that ledger. Somewhere there along the line, they raised me from $500 a month or year to $840 a year. And just a few years ago, raised me to $10,150, I think it was, a year. So you see, just every time, every way, God has provided for us in ways that I've just been amazed at what He's done. But I just look forward to that day, when we all get to heaven. And when we're all going to have the fulfillment of what He says. John said this, "Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us, that we could be called the children of God." Does not yet appear what we're going to be, but we know that when He appears, we're going to be like Him. We're going to have the privilege of being with Jesus forever and forever. And I want to thank you again for everything that you've done here. It's because of the fact that you've just worked together as a family of God, the body of Christ working together. And God has put it together. And Paul said, not everybody's got the same gift, but everybody's got a gift. We'll use that gift. God will bless that, and things will happen, and we'll keep building new buildings or whatever we need to do here, because He is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we'll ever ask or think. Saw Jimmy Williams back there, and I mentioned his mother this morning. And Miss Hattie Lee was here for everything that went on. And as I told you this morning, never on time. I don't care if whatever it was, you could change the time around. She just changed hers around. She wasn't going to be here on time. But her faithfulness, Ms. Dalfrin, Ms. Etta Dalfrin over here, couldn't do anything much. When I came, she was an elderly lady. Two things she could do. She could sit there with that Bible in her lap all day long. You could go in there any time. The second thing she was noted for, she could make Louisiana chicory coffee and boil it all day long, and those boys would go through there like it was the best stuff you ever had. In fact, old Smith, it was the insurance, what's his name? Insurance, Liberty National, dead. What? Yeah. And he'd make sure that he got to Ms. Dalfrin's every day, dinner time, when he's collecting her insurance.